policy that you put out. So for example, we have a block grant that addresses chronic disease reduction. So we as CCHD several years ago brought all 4 towns together to talk about, how can we get people to be moving more? What can we do to really enact policies to allow for that? And, things like Bike Walk Wethersfield, Walk Bike Rocky Hill, they always switch that up, really came into being and really into force at that time, to really look at how we can take that communal experience and turn it into a municipal policy for things like complete streets, for walking, all those things. In addition to that, we spend a lot of time on prevention through health promotion. We're coming up into Walk This May now. And for those of you who don't know, that's our 4-town walking competition. And I know Ray wants to get that trophy back. And Mr. Mayor, you haven't lived until you've had a statue this tall with a gold size 13 shoe on top of it to show that your town is the most active of our 4. In addition to that, you can look around your community. This block grant really has provided resources back into the community in terms of benches, bike repair stations, bike racks. So we actually bring that back to our communities to be able to make it more walkable, more bikeable. Our vaccine program, every October we do flu clinics, and we've been doing that for, several years, decades now. 3 main focus is really to prevent influenza morbidity and mortality, but also to practice our emergency public health. We go out and do homebound folks and make sure that they get vaccinated as well. And this is a significant portion of our revenue. We actually bill for the insurance companies for the vaccinations we give. It helps us support the programs and services we provide. Our clinical health services continue that. So not only do they do influenza, both child, adult, and senior high dose, but they do this in such a way that it actually is in a sensory-friendly environment. We worked with the Autism Society. They provided us some resources. So our clinic on Cromwell Ave actually has a lot of things that can calm people if they're nervous or if they might have some sensory issues, to allow them to get vaccinated. And what that does, because if a child, for example, is really traumatized, their entire family may not get vaccinated. So us being able to provide an environment where they can go, have somebody take the time, has allowed more than that child to actually receive the vaccination. We're also looking at doing COVID-19 vaccination in the fall, do a lot of education about CT-WIZ, which is the vaccination records here in Connecticut. And we do testing and screenings like hepatitis C and blood pressure screenings, which were very popular here in Rocky Hill at the Senior Center the last time we did them. Might have had something to do with the 2 college students that we had that were doing them, but the seniors loved the fact that they were down there. Last but not least, our response to the opioid crisis. So CCHD is just like any public health agency. We're the table. So we bring people together around that table to talk about issues that affects health within the community. And one of the big things that we've done here recently is look at the opioid crisis. We have 2 recovery coaches that are working under grants from the CDC and the state to be able to be out there. If they get a response for an overdose, they can follow up after the fact to assure that if somebody's looking to be on the road to recovery, that they get there. In addition to that, last year alone, our recovery coaches in our 4 towns actually distributed over 700 doses of Narcan. So that's within the community, our 4 communities, to assure that if somebody is in the presence of somebody who's overdosing, that they have the tools and the training to be able to respond. So how do we prepare for the future? So we don't have a crystal ball. I really wish I did. If I did, I'd probably be looking just like that picture. Because the clouds for public health are dark right now. I will be honest with you. We are under attack nationally from the federal level as far as the funding that we receive and really for the work that we do at times. Our board does a really good job in assuring that our policies are in place to be able to address the future. So we adopted a strategic plan 2 years ago. They oversee that to assure that we're doing the things that we're supposed to be doing. In addition to that, we've done community health assessment, are currently in the process of updating that. So we've had town managers, chief police, police chiefs, and other folks that have been part of our focus groups. And there's currently, if you go on our website, a perception survey for health. So if you can take the opportunity to go to the website, fill that survey out. We need to know from each community how you feel the health is within your community. So that community engagement is critically important to us. The last 2 words as always are thanks. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to serve, and I stand ready to answer any questions. Was that fast for a Southerner or not?
Yeah, that was good. Charlie, and I think the thing that would be at the top of a lot of residents is the ticks.
Yeah.
So I know you had mentioned they can bring them, if they have one on them, they could bring it to the office for evaluation. Is there like a pamphlet that people can access online to?
Oh, we have a lot of information about ticks, and the form itself is on our website.
Okay.
So, as I mentioned to the Public Safety Committee, this is a bad year for ticks, just because we had a lot of snow cover, not really very, very cold temperatures at times, so didn't kill off a lot of the little buggers. What it did was allow them to kind of stay in a nice little blanket under the leaf debris, and then as we're going out now to interact, they're jumping on, looking for a meal and a hitchhike. So take the time to do a tick check when you're out there, when you're walking. And then if you do find a tick on you, you can definitely bring it by the office. We'd be happy to send it to the Extension Service and get it tested.
Thanks.
Questions from anybody else?
No question. You mentioned 700 Narcan. Is that in how long?
In 1 year.
Is that a lot compared to other areas of the state? Guess I have nothing to compare it to. So I'm curious.
I can't really say how much Hartford does, for example.
Yeah, I don't know if I
But,
could compare it.
for suburban communities, that's a lot. We do have the Berlin Turnpike that runs through, but also Silestein Highway. Some of the places that we find where our recovery coaches go, we really do focus on areas where we have data. One of the grants that we have is the Overdose Data to Action grant, where we see where overdoses occur, and then we can target our recovery coaches' activities there. So we've had instances where somebody's overdosed in a restaurant or a gas station. Our recovery coaches will show up there, talk to the management, and actually train staff, and distribute Narcan to them at that point. So 700 is a big number.
Yeah.
Especially for 2 or 3 people that are out there in the community doing that training.
Yeah, I thought so too. Okay, thank you.
Along those same lines, that number jumped out at me as well. Keep in mind that is also just being proactive to distribute that ahead of time. That isn't like 700 doses were used. That's like 700 doses got into people's hands.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
all right,
Correct?
Okay.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
They weren't used.
No,
they
no,
were
no,
just
no,
distributed.
no.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
what we distributed.
I got you.
And getting it into people's hands ahead of time,
Yeah.
that's the name of the game.
Yeah.
Because what we see in fatalities is if somebody didn't have that available to them, they're waiting for EMS to show up. And sometimes, it's a family that's concerned about a loved one, about their activities. So if they can get trained and have it on hand and be able to, help when it happens, we've seen the overdose fatalities drop precipitously in the last few years.
Yeah, along those lines, just a couple things. I went through a training with the Middlesex Chamber of Commerce, had somebody come in, and they distributed Narcan to everybody that was there. And another key thing for people to know is I believe anybody can get Narcan at any pharmacy in the state at any time.
Yet it is available.
CVS,
but-
Walgreens, all those places are like required to carry it, and so you can't walk down the street without throwing a rock at a CVS, just about, right? I mean, they're all over the place, so.
Yeah, availability definitely has increased. The good thing about coming to the events that we put on is that we give it away for free. So
Yeah.
we're not charging people, so if somebody goes into CVS where where have it available, it's not available for free.
Right, but in the event of an emergency.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They
Having the
also will have
availability
them on hand.
throughout the community
Yes.
where somebody can get it, absolutely a public health win.
Yes. And to that end, you said that overdoses have dropped precipitously, or fatalities have.
Fatalities.
I've seen I don't know if I've seen the most recent numbers at public safety meetings, but there's been a few public safety meetings where we've reported 0 or 1 or something like that over the last year or so, correct?
Yes.
It's like, so is that what we're basically seeing across quarterly or monthly now
What
in the area?
we're seeing a reduction in those, and I think it may be part of our success in the fact that there is Narcan out there. So if somebody does overdose, they don't necessarily have to call EMS if they can revive somebody there. So, I think also education makes a huge factor in being able to try to get out there, do our prevention job, and get people early before they get on the path to addiction.
Yeah, my point just being, there's obviously a lot of pieces that go into that, but with all the work that you're doing, getting 700 of these out in the community in a year, and I believe all of our first responders carry stuff, I'm sure, as well, that certainly contributes to such a precipitous drop.
And just, if you don't mind, just to drive your point home a little bit more and just say to anyone in the public, this is not for just first responders or for people in certain positions. Anyone in the public can carry Narcan. Anyone can be ready for that moment that they're out of business and they find out that somebody's in a bathroom and they're in trouble. I recommend it if you're somebody who feels like you're a responsible member of society and wanted to be helpful when something happens. Go to that CVS. Go see if you can get yourself a little bit and keep it in your car, keep it wherever you go. I know even the lieutenant governor, she keeps it with herself in case something happens on her watch. So we're all in this together, and we all can play our part. I hope you look into it.
I think they're good for like 3 years or something like
Yeah.
that too. So
They have
you
good
can throw it
shelf
in your
life.
glove box. And I just had one other question, not related to that, but you said there's a vacancy on the board. What kind of experiences would be helpful on the board for the health district? Breathing, a pulse, is that-
Breathing, a pulse, that all helps. No, I mean,
fog
to
up
be-
a mirror. Yeah,
To,
got
to
it.
be honest, we take anybody as far as that's concerned. They don't have to have a health background to be a contributing member for our board. Our board really does represent kind of the spectrum of our communities.
Just a variety of
so-
public servants. type
Yeah,
thing.
variety of
Anybody who
public
wants to
servants or
volunteer.
just somebody who is interested. Because what we want a lot of times and what we count on our board to do is to provide that information from the community and also serve as a liaison back into the community from our agency. So, Barbara?
You don't really,
Do you mind stepping
Oh,
up?
if you want to.
Yeah.
Oh, you got a mic. There we go.
I should know better, but you don't really need to have any health background. I have none. But you bring other things to the table. I bring my understanding of how municipalities work, budgets, things of that nature. We have others who are nurses, we have medical doctors, we have doctors of epidemiology, but we also have everyday citizens. Marty Stiglich, who recently passed away and it's the vacancy from her position, was a HR person, but she understood what we needed in the health district for employees, and she worked on that very diligently. So as you're approaching someone and looking for someone to fill this position, they don't have to, if they go to a doctor, they qualify. That's their medical background. I hate to make fun of it or be silly about it, but we need someone so that, right now, there's 2 of us. The other member has not been able to make the last 2 meetings due to work commitments. You must have a representative from every town there, or we cannot meet. So having our full contingency is very important.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I have just a quick question. Might as well try to kill 2 birds with one stone. You mentioned that you're in fear of federal funding drying up. And so does that mean the per capita number you referenced in your presentation may go up in the future years?
It is a possibility, and our board actually has already voted on the per capita for the coming year. And we're looking at a 5% increase to be able to cover that. That's actually fairly low. We've done a lot with respect to our budget to keep that low. And if you look at the 20 health districts in the state, we are right in the middle as far as what we cost. So the cost for health districts run anywhere from $4.95 on the low end to the high end of about $21.85, if I remember correctly. So it's over $21. So we're right in the middle of that.
Right. So I'm just concerned about going forward. I know this year's budget, that didn't seem to be an increase, but if this year you exceeded, the funding exceeded the actual per capita.
Yeah.
So if that's going to like reverse dramatically, then.
Yeah, I mean, the one good thing is that we do have a substantial reserve at this point. Our board helps us to be able to do that type of management, to be able to look at
I saw good
that.
interest income. I did
What's
see
that?
I saw interest income too, so that was nice to see.
Yeah, we have state treasury investment fund accounts that actually cover quite a bit and help us, to kind of weather some of the storms. We're required by our policies to have a 35% reserve because a health district is like a business. So.
What we're approaching in the loss of grants, what we are approaching and with the loss of grants is, will have an impact on us. But we have been preparing for this.
Oh, yes.
For at least the past 5 years and making sure that we had a strong contingency. We will be back on May 7th with our budget. And so that you understand, we have had an increase in population. Rocky Hill went up by 600 people.
Yeah.
So that will affect your donation. But as of now, we are probably your best buy. I'd love to say if we were following the MDC, because then you wouldn't even want to talk to us. But as someone who for many years stomped her feet and threatened to back out of the health district, it really is a benefit to the town. It provides you much more than you could ever afford to do on your own. I don't have a cold, this is hay fever, but it's something that happens. But we are facing a serious loss of grants, and we are going into the budget eliminating one of our vacant positions. That's, we're going to work, and what we're going to do is hire per diem folks instead of having someone full-time. It's a way to make it work for the citizens, but it's also a change in how we do business.
Thank you. Anybody else, anything? All right. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you
And
very
we'll
much.
see you back in a couple weeks anyway.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Moving on to old business, discussion, possible action, speed cameras, presentation, site stream. And thank you guys for your patience as well.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Andrew Noble. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I thought I'd make it a little bit different, a bit of a show and tell, because I'm conscious you've been through several of these presentations already. It's great to be here. Let me try and navigate this without using my glasses. Again, my name is Andrew Noble. I hail from Boston, Massachusetts. I've been in photo enforcement nearly for 21 years now, joined here by my colleagues David Kozak and Adam Salina. They both live locally here in Connecticut, and they both helped craft that legislation that went through the State House a couple of years ago, allowing for automatic traffic enforcement safety devices. I've implemented almost 70 programs around North America and Central America in those last 21 years, and I'm a committed advocate for road safety. Across all of our programs, regardless how they're used, essentially they're requiring zero city investment to create violator-funded programs and improving driver behavior. That's across the whole country. Not one of our clients has to pay $1 for the capital installation costs or for the operational costs, the duration of their program. And we've learned over those last 20 years, these programs can be self-sustaining from the very beginning. We partner with cities, counties, and municipalities across the country to make your community safer. And that's how we should be thinking about these programs. It's about safety first, and of course the byproduct is they do generate some revenue as well. Now, we're proud here at SiteStream that in Connecticut over the last year, we've been awarded 5 contracts which are currently in implementation. Closest to you, of course, is Wethersfield. We have 14 speed and red light cameras that actually just finished construction about 2 weeks ago. Power is being connected in about the next 10 days, we hope. And then after that, you'll start seeing the cameras on the program. Stamford, Connecticut was the first town in the state to actually not only issue an RFP, but to also have a rigorous testing process for the technology too. So in choosing us for their school zone speed cameras, they tested our technology at the side of the road before they went live into the implementation. Winchester, that just got approved by the DOT last week, and so we go into pre-construction. And Hamden just got approved by the DOT last week as well for its first tranche of cameras. So we've got a lot going on in here in Connecticut. And I'm driving down here every week to see our clients and potential clients. And as I said, David Kozak and Adam Selina are here too. Now, again, conscious you've seen several versions of this presentation in time. In fact, Mayor Smith and Chief Kled, I know I've presented something like this to yourself before, so I'm not going to go over all of the guidelines and the law as it pertains to photo enforcement. I know that you're already well educated in that matter. But the guidelines give you 95% of the recipe card on how to run a program. Part of our role as a partner and a vendor is to ensure that you've managed to fill in that missing 5% and run a program that is transparent, that's accurate, and gives the members of the public what they're looking for. Now, I said I'd make this a bit of a show and tell, so I've actually bought the camera today. This is the entirety of our national speed and red light camera. So I'll pass it through if I can. This is the real one. It's not a fake one, so please try not to drop it because that's a $20,000 doorstop otherwise if you do. In the middle of that unit, you'll see a square. That is a 4D high-resolution tracking camera. It is allowing us to capture vehicles with a very high level of accuracy, and this is the smallest camera in the industry. Now, outside the United States, this is a government and internationally regulated industry. Not quite the same extent as pharmaceuticals and food, but you just can't create a red light or speed camera and sell it to the public. And the reason for that is because outside the United States, people are not only getting tickets with a fine, but they're getting points on their licenses. Their insurance company's being notified. Now, in the States, none of those things happen. There is not a single program in this country run by any vendor that put points on the license and informs an insurance company. And so consequently, there's a lot more companies in the United States that do these types of programs, but they don't have technology that meets those international standards. But we do. And it's important we provide you that technology, because if we have to defend the case in court, and I'm not just talking about a contested ticket hearing in the town, but actually go to a law court and demonstrate you were doing 39.4 miles an hour the way we said you were, we have to be able to prove that. And that camera does it. It's got the most advanced 2-axis beam steering radar in the world to make sure we have accuracy to be 0.138 miles an hour. Now, depending on how many lanes you have at your intersection or your school zone or your speed area, the camera inside, which is that large circle you see, is between 16 and 24 megapixels. It's twice the sensitivity in low light conditions than other vendors. And what does that really mean to people in the audience and to members of the council? It means the camera can be smaller. It doesn't have to have lots of extra flashes on the pole. They can all be integrated into the unit. It means it uses less power, which means it can be more easily solar powered, which means it can be more smaller on the pole. Rocky Hill spends more than $10 million a year on its parks and recreations and public works. You care about the way your community looks. Your members of the public care about how their community looks, and so do we. So we provide you the smallest, most sensitive unit around the country. And there's a video camera in there as well, because if we were using this as a red light camera, it's important for us to capture videos of cars that are going through the intersection, where you can clearly see the light has changed from green to yellow to red. So that's why we use a video camera too. Now, how we detect if the lights change from green to yellow to red is not by tying into the traffic signal controller, but actually doing it through the video camera itself. It's the video camera's not only taking videos of cars violating the red light intersection, it's measuring the lights and changing from green to yellow to red and arming the camera ready to take a photograph. That makes it more DOT friendly. That means that the DOT permits through the Office of State Traffic Administration are easier to get through. and much easier to install at this side of the street. And because I said before, it's got a very light-sensitive camera inside, we have a very anti-dazzle, highly integrated LED flash on there as well, or infrared in areas where you may already have a lot of ambient light. So it's really designed to be neighbor-friendly for your organization. Now, aside from taking pictures of people speeding or running red lights, it's also anonymously, through the radar, measuring how many vehicles are going past it. Looking at the classification, is it a car, is it a truck, is it a motorcycle? It's not taking license plates or photographs of anything unless you're speeding and running a red light, but it creates a lot of anonymous traffic data, which is really useful for you and for the traffic authorities around here to understand who's using your road or what kind of vehicles are using your road. So we have 7 different classifications of vehicles. And finally, it's NDAA compliant, made here in the United States. Now, this is an example of how the radar works. It sees traffic coming towards it or away from it because the unit can actually work in both approaching and receding vehicles. You'll see those moving items change color as they go across the screen because the radar is actually getting the classification and understanding it's a big truck or it's a small truck or it's a car. And so it's able to actually perform different behaviors against those things. Now, here in Connecticut, it's a one-size-fits-all legislation. You're either speeding or you're not. It's the same speed limit for cars as it is for trucks. But around the country, this radar and this camera allows us to apply different traffic laws. So, for example, if the legislation was to change here in Connecticut and allow us to do illegal U-turns or no turn on red or no trucks turning left at this intersection after 6 p.m. in the evening because it's a residential area, we could enforce that with this camera. Here in Connecticut right now with current legislation, it's just speed and red light, but everything's done through that camera there. Now, I mentioned before about the signal detection being video-based, and the DOT really like that because they don't like people going the traffic signalized intersection controllers. There's a lot of laws around that, a lot of testing and certificates around that. But if we don't have to touch them at all, they really like it. The reason why you see the video being slightly monochrome there is because we get a better contrast between the traffic light and the surrounding area. We're not looking at trying to get the video of the color of the car. We're just trying to make sure we can actually measure the traffic light and where it is in the phase. Now, all of these cameras are connected via a cell modem, real-time, at our cost, to our facility in Massachusetts. So we're able to change the parameters of the programs of the cameras. We're able to monitor the health of the cameras. And if the camera's seeing a change drastically in traffic statistics and data, it might lead us to believe something's not quite right. So we get a pulse alert from the camera, allowing us to see what's going on in the camera. And as I said before, we get a lot of traffic data and statistics, which are great for your traffic engineering department and for the state and Department of Yukon as well. All of this is included as part of our program. Now, outside of the automated traffic enforcement safety devices of speed and red light, state legislation in Connecticut also allows for school bus stop arm enforcement. That's been quite a while. You've had it for a long time now, but the law changed 2 years ago that if you put cameras on the side of your school bus now, the revenue from those violations can stay in your community. Different legislation. The fine threshold is much higher. It's about $250 for the first violation. And rather than that money going back to the state, it can now stay in your community. Here's an example of some no-injury videos. So the stop arm is deployed. Cars are going past. All of these cars, by the way, are creating violations because in the state in which that bus is located, unless you had a solid median, no one's allowed to go past the bus. And so, actually, I'm not sure if the second video is going to play. There we go, so I apologize. Oh, well, I think it's stopped here. Also, in Connecticut, you're allowed to have some noise-based cameras. This is legislation that passed about 18 months ago. So if you have a noisy area where you have a lot of people with aftermarket mufflers on their cars, drag racing down your streets, you can put noise detection cameras on. Now, going back to slide number 3 in Wethersfield, we've actually installed on Silas Deane Highway the red light and speed cameras. The next tranche of enforcement for Wethersfield is the noise-based cameras from our company as well. So we do a lot of things regarding photo enforcement, not just speed and red light. Now, regardless of what kind of camera you have on the front end, noise, red light, speed, or school bus, it's the same 10-step process. The cameras are triggered automatically. Remember, we're only taking photographs of people who are violating the law. You can have 100,000 cars go past the camera. It's the one car that's speeding that we take a photograph, not anybody else. The images are uploaded automatically in step number 2 to our violations processing center just north of Boston, Massachusetts, where a member of our team looks at that information to make sure it's a real violation. The car indeed did go through the red light intersection and the light was red at that time. If we feel it's a real violation and not part of a 70-car funeral procession, for example, we run the license plate through the DMV. Now, we are connected to a national DMV called NLETS. NLETS is the National Law Enforcement Telecommunications System. It was designed in the 1920s as a mechanism for law enforcement communities around the country to share criminal information. It's now, of course, digital. It's based in Scottsdale, Arizona. It also happens to be the point of reference where all of the DMVs and RMVs around the country upload their daily information about who owns a car and where they live, whether it's a lease car or a rental car. So rather than us tying into the DMV in Connecticut to see who drove past your cameras last night, we can tie into the whole country by going directly to NLETS based in Arizona. Now, we don't get to see any of the other information inside of NLETS. We only get to see who owns a car in any one of those particular states in which we live, and in the Canadian provinces too, because of course up here in the Northeast, as we all know, in the summertime, we have people coming down into our communities from Quebec and Ontario, and so we're able to run their license plates too. Now, the nice thing about NLETS is it's a secured lockdown facility governed by the FBI under the Criminal Justice Information Act. And so we're allowed as a strategic partner access to that data. But moreover, we chose at SiteStream to host all our source code and our data inside NLETS. So they have a government law enforcement storage facility, and we utilize that for all of our software and all of our records across the country. And then we have a third contract with NLETS where we actually pay them to look after that data. So it takes a very complicated security manual and it puts the emphasis essentially on the criminal justice information itself. Now, none of this information can be shared with anybody. The state is very clear who owns the information. It belongs to you, the client city. The cars were going past your cameras, you own the data, and the law prohibits it in Connecticut by being shared with anybody else in our contracts as well at the same time. So we run the license plate in step number 4. NLETS comes back and says it's a white Ford Explorer. We see from the photographs or video it's a white Ford Explorer. We're conscious and confident it's actually a violation. We hold it in a queue, ready for the police to approve it. Now, typically around the country, it is a member of the law enforcement. As you know, here in Connecticut, legislation allows for a designated employee in the city to do it too, and that was for the most part to allow for much smaller communities that maybe didn't have their own local police department to do their own violations approval. So we hold it in a queue. A member of your police department, in this example, would log on to our screen with their own access username and password, and they would look at that well choreographed information we've laid out for them, the video, the information about the registered owner and the vehicle, and the still images too, even the calibration certificates of the camera, because these units have to be re-verified for camera calibration every year. They see that on one page, and very easily they get to make a decision to yes, send the ticket, or no, don't send the ticket. Now, if they say no, don't send the ticket, because of course it's up to the community, we ask them the reason why, because it does meet state statute, it does meet the ordinance and the business rules for your enforcement, and it should have gone out, but of course the last law comes down to the police department. So we ask them, why don't you want to send it? And that genuinely is for quality and training purposes, because if a staff member of ours puts something through that they shouldn't have done, we want to know about that. But if you say, yes, send it, then at site point number 6, we print it locally in Massachusetts, and it goes in the mail that day. We print 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and it goes USPS first-class mail that day. And we have a certificate of receipt from the United States as well on that printing for each and every violation that goes into our software. Now, assuming the person going past your community lives within a state or two of here, they're going to get that notice the next day. Very, very quick indeed. Now, the legislation in Connecticut says from point number 1, cameras being triggered, to point number 7, us mailing the citation, we essentially have 30 days. We at SiteStream work that in 3. And we work that in 3 days for due process reasons. It's not about trying to get the money earlier. That's an economic that actually doesn't work. It's about due process, because the law allows you to transfer the liability to someone that may have been driving your car that day rather than you, the registered vehicle owner, much like a parking ticket or a toll violation. So if we get that ticket in the mail within 3 to 4 days, you're more likely to remember who you lent your car to on Tuesday of last week, but not 3 Tuesdays ago. So that's why we work as quick as possible. Once in step number 4, the person who owns that car gets that ticket, we invite them to go to a special website that we have where they can actually put in their citation number and their PIN number, which is unique to that piece of paper. And on our website, they get to download the FAQs about the program, the calibration certificate from the camera, pay the ticket, or contest the violation or transfer it to perhaps their brother Jimmy, who was driving their car last Tuesday. All of that in the same 10-step process on the same website. If they want to transfer the liability, they can do it right there, as I said before. We collect the money into a dedicated beneficiary account for you, and every 2 weeks, we send you the money for the program along with the appropriate reporting for that. So that's a 10-step process, regardless of what type of camera you have at the front end. Now, I said at the beginning that the DOT guidelines give you 95% of the recipe card, and they do. And it's the 5% navigating that we help you with. Working more than 20 years across the country, we know what works best in terms of sending a second reminder notice, which you're allowed to do. How you transfer the liability to somebody else that may have been driving your car that day. The timing of all those things. We've learned best practices over the time, so we work with yourself and your police department to make sure that the workflow software and the way the ticketing program works on our system is exactly how you want it to. If you want to change the way the program works after 6 months or 6 years, we can easily do that too at no cost. All of our goals are to give you an efficient, transparent, and accurate program. Now, state law mandates that the citations go out and contain certain mandatory information. And typically with most programs, you follow a standard harmonized view. So on the left-hand side, you have what's called a warning notice there. State law says that for the first 30 days of each camera's operation, it can only issue warning notices, each camera. So in other words, if we've been in operation for 6 months or a year, and you decide to add another camera, that next camera has to have its own 30-day warning period, even though you've been working for almost a year on the initial cameras that went into your program. The warning notice makes it very clear on several places you don't have to pay anything. It's just to draw attention to people that this program is live and it's working. We invite them to go to the website with that yellow arrow at the top that you see, put in the citation and the PIN number, and they can see their own videos and their own photographs, download them, forward them, whatever they want to do. Again, the FAQs of the program and the calibration certificates. On day 31, that camera starts issuing real tickets, which is the middle notice you see there. It has photographs, of course, of the car. It has the officer attestation about how they looked at the evidence, and their digital signature is imposed in there, including their badge number. On the back of that citation in the middle document, it has all the options available to them. And if they phone the telephone number at the bottom, they'll come to our call center in our offices in Massachusetts, and a member of our team will help them navigate their next steps. If they fail to do anything, pay it, contest, or transfer, we send a reminder notice. It's called a notice of final determination, which is that final document you see there. At this point, it's a debt on them, the registered vehicle owner. They can't transfer it to anybody else, and they can't contest it. They've had 30 days to do that. So typically we send that notice of final determination out after approximately 45 days, because some people really wait to the last minute to send their check or transfer or contest. So rather than sending on day 31, we typically send on day 45 to make sure there's no interruption to the program. All these are customized to the community, but typically they sort of follow the same harmonized flow. Now, before the warning periods start, public information is absolutely key. It's also mandated in state legislation. So we work hard with your community and your public information officer to create digital and print materials that meet state standard and also the spirit of why you want to put in a program in place. This is an example from a sheriff's office in Iowa that had 6 speed cameras on a 30-mile piece of divided highway. Tired of fatalities every 4th week, and so we put some speed cameras up, and so the sheriff published some materials about the FAQs of why he was putting these cameras in place. We create these in the colors, the fonts, the style with our in-house design department that we have in Massachusetts of your own program. We turn up in local affairs. So, for example, in Hamden 2 years ago, in 24, we turned up, or last year, sorry, in 25, we turned up at the Hamden Fest, which, as you can appreciate, is a typical summer fair where you have bands and food stalls and children's races and all sorts of vendors. We all wore silly T-shirts. We gave Frisbees to the kids. We put a big PowerPoint presentation together, a little bit different to this one, showing members of the public about the cameras and where they were going to go as we go through the implementation process. And 100% of the people that we spoke to that day, parents, children, grandparents, were really supportive of the cameras going into Hamden, up and down Dixwell Avenue. So we would be doing the same in Wethersfield this summer, and the same in Stamford, and the same in Winchester. Now, at the other end of the program, the materials we create are reports and dashboards. So regardless of your interest and your stakeholder in the program, we create specialist materials for you. So when you log in as the finance director of the city, you might see something different than the police chief might see, or the traffic engineer. We know that elected officials like to get a once a month or once a 2-week report on how the program's doing. So we create things that are bespoke to you and your community to let you know how the program is doing. Is traffic better this January than it was last January? Has the 85th percentile of speeds past our camera decreased over the last 2 years? Things like that. So that's what we do to give you something special for yourself. This is an example from that same sheriff of the 6 speed cameras on his highway in Iowa. He wants to know, in the last month, how many citations did you issue from each of those speed cameras, and what was the highest level of speed each of those speed cameras saw. Those speeds on the right-hand side are real. He had a 65-mile-an-hour road, and we were regularly seeing people in the 80s and high 90s. He also wanted to know, of all the violators going past my cameras, where do they come from? Are they my part of Lee County, Iowa, or are they from a neighboring state? So we create these bespoke dashboards and reports for you, so you can get exactly the kind of information that you might want to have. In this case, the sheriff wants to know if they're coming from the state just south of him in Missouri. So whatever you need, we'll get that to you. Now, violation history audit trails are extremely important. We're handling photographs we're taking from the side of the street and some public information. So as soon as a photograph is taken, we have an audit trail start from cradle to grave of who touched it, what they did with it, on our side, on your side, the date and timestamp, the stage, the duration of the program. Now, state law is very clear. The data from these cameras has to be kept for 1 year. And it has to be kept for 1 year because if you get a second fine within a 1-year period, or a third fine, the fine level increases from $50 from a speed camera to $75, for example. So we have to keep the data for a year. At SiteStream, we get rid of the photographs after 30 days from final disposition. So if you pay your ticket within 45 days, for example, 30 days after that, we get rid of the photographs. But by state law, we should keep the data of who owned the car in the violation, because if you get a second ticket, we need to issue it at a higher fine level. But this audit trail stays for the duration of the program. So if there's ever a Freedom of Information request, which we can handle for you with your permission, we can get all this information from that. So audits and transparency are very important. The payment portal, as I said before, is where you go as a violator to look at the ordinances, download the FAQs, make your payment, transfer your ticket to your brother Jimmy. If you do so, our system asks you to attest as a registered vehicle owner that you're telling the truth. Our system automatically sends out the ticket to Jimmy. If Jimmy responds appropriately, then it goes on to Jimmy. If Jimmy ignores it, it comes back to you as a registered vehicle owner, as state law allows. Now, if you want to contest your ticket, it's handled much the same way as a parking ticket would be done in your own community. These are civil violations, not criminal infractions. And so our mechanism allows for you to calendar your 15 minutes in front of the ticket hearing officer, if you like, within your town, or however you handle your parking tickets. Some communities want to do this remotely completely. They want it through a contest by mail process. Others want to do contest by Zoom. Other people want to do a contest locally in person. So however you want to do it, we can navigate the calendaring of that within our system. And as I said before, you log in with your citation number and your PIN number, which are unique to your ticket, and you go through the process from there. And of course, if you want to pay it, the usual debit card, credit card, electronic check can also be used at that point. Or you can send in a real check to our Violations Processing Center. We'll take paper checks too. 16% of people still pay by check. In Stamford, we've tied into what they call their teller system. So if you want to go into City Hall with your bag of pennies and pay in cash. You can do that in Stamford, and their banking system at Stamford will then tell our system that John Smith just paid his ticket and not to send him to collections or anything like that. So we were very used to and welcome the chance to integrate with your own city systems to make finance operations easier for you. Now, I talked earlier about customer service. About 6% of people who get a ticket want to have a phone call about it, particularly in a state where photo enforcement is new. Now, neighboring to us, we have Rhode Island, which has photo enforcement, and New York has photo enforcement. But here in Connecticut, it's still very new. And so we typically see between 6 to 8% of a new state have people want to call somebody. We don't outsource it. Tried that 20 years ago. Didn't work. So it's all in-house. We record the calls, and our staff are there trained specifically to help on this. And it's not their job to persuade or dissuade you to pay or contest or transfer, just to help you through that process. We're very proud of our team and the delicacy by which they handle those calls, because as you can appreciate, no one's phoning up for their concert tickets. They've got a ticket and they're not very happy, as you can appreciate. Now, in terms of timelines and expectations, 30 days after signing a contract with a client, we would have completed your DOT OSTR justification reports. We have our own in-house design team that do that. We know what kind of traffic analysis studies need to be run and speed analysis studies need to be done, the drawings that need to be provided, and all the material that's laid out in that 18-page guideline document. So we create that within 30 days, and then you submit it to OSTR because it's done from the community. But we've done all the burden work for you, not in isolation of you, but in concert with you. So we've made it easy for you. You submit it to the DOT. They have 60 days to make a determination on the cameras and the locations where you want to put them. And of course, if they want to ask a question or make a comment, that stops the shot clock and then it starts up again. But then simply within 60 days, you get the opinion. With Winchester, we got an approval on all the locations within 43 days, so working very, very quickly. Now, once we have that approval from OSTR, we start our proper implementation. So within the first 40 days, we've done your citations design, we've done the workflow mapping, we've done all the business rules discussions with the police department about how they want to handle second, third tickets and the timing of reminder notices and things like that, and contested tickets. We've created the public information materials. We've got the officers' digital signatures to put on the citation. We've talked to the finance team to ensure we may make sure we get the reports that they want to see. We've done the dashboard reports that you as elected officials want to see, all within the first 40 days. And in parallel with that, in a 60-day process, we're also doing the construction itself. So we're getting the permits and the encroachment permits we need if we're going to go into a DOT right away. Even though DOT said, yes, you can run this program, there's a separate permitting process we work through very quickly to make sure we're allowed to dig the holes and pour the concrete. But I'll go back to a point I made earlier on. Our camera's so light, as you saw, just 6.3 pounds. It can easily go on your existing infrastructure. In fact, that's our preference, that if we can go on an existing city pole where there's power, or we'll even put up our own solar array, you can be up and running even quicker. But within 60 days, in parallel with that first 40 from OSTR, as I said before, we'll have you up and running. Once the cameras are ready to go live, we have a 5-day test period. This is not the warning period, it's our internal 5-day test period. We're running the whole program. We're printing fake citations. We're not running license plates. We're doing it for 5 days to make sure everything's in accordance with where it needs to be. We're sending reports to the finance department to make sure that they can read them. We're creating reports for elected officials. And after that, on day 6, we start the first 30-day warning period for the first camera. Now, at the end of my presentation now, I want to come back to my first or second slide, which talked about me being a committed advocate for road safety. Something we do that's very special to us is called our Safe Teen Initiative. I'm a huge believer in trying to create a safer driving population going forward. So we take 1% of our revenue from your program, which is all violator funded, of course, and then we give it back to you twice a year for you to give to your high schoolers to get driving lessons. More driving lessons, better driving lessons, drunk driver simulator lessons, anything you want to do. Who gets the money, how much they get, that's up to you. We don't want to navigate and manage your driver's ed program, but we want to give you the funds to make it a better program, a bigger program, a more inclusive program, and the idea that hopefully creating a safer driving population going forwards. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have to comment on. Thank you.
Anybody like to start?
Well, can I ask a procedural tonight question before because I do have a list of questions, but if we have possible action tonight, is it possible action to go forward with speed cameras, or is it possible action to go forward with speed cameras and who we're using?
I don't think we need to do either of those tonight.
Okay,
Yeah, I think tonight is the possible action is just to decide on what we want to go next from here. I think we probably still have some additional steps. We got to hear from the public about it, what the public wants. We've got to hear, potentially again,
so then potential vendors would maybe come back.
either come back or, or we do
Just,
an
you know,
RFP
I
or.
could see redundancy of questions if we ask a bunch tonight and then have to ask them again. That's the only reason I'm asking, because mine have more to do with him than the actual concept of having safer driving.
Okay,
so-
I mean, I would say, tonight while we have one of the vendors here, we ask maybe specific things around this specific vendor. And then, I think we would want to have like a public hearing or something like that to talk about generalities, maybe what the public wants in terms of.
Then I'll ask more general then. I'll keep some of my specifics. Do you think, you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation that in the States, unlike, over in Europe or wherever else, they actually try to tie the violation to the person as opposed to the vehicle, right? And, in terms of the states not doing that, do you see from whatever experience and knowledge you have that they may be going to try to tie it to the individual driver versus the vehicle in the States?
No, I mean, actually, there was, up until recently, there were 4 states that had driver liability: California, Washington, Colorado, and Oregon on the West Coast. They've increasingly become owner liability states. And so there's a couple of states still as holdouts, but for the most part, all of these programs across the country are owner liability. You own the program, you own the ticket. You own the car, you own the ticket, much like a parking ticket
Okay,
or
so-
toll violation. Yeah.
I would assume you have to have a higher resolution camera, and that might be a little bit more difficult to prove who's driving anyways, but, okay. And then you mentioned also, you keep record of this. Has any of your data or videos been used to solve other violations or criminal activity? Because you say we own the data. Let's say something happened in town, and it would be very helpful to have that camera footage.
So the law is very clear in Connecticut that the data can only be used for the purpose of issuing these civil violations. I will tell you, outside of Connecticut, we're able to use this technology for the police department to look through the video camera live, for example, because someone says there's a water main break on Church Street, and you can look into the camera and actually, let's send 2 fire trucks. There's 9 feet of water, not 3 feet of water. We also had video archive. So if there's a gas station robbery last night across from one of the cameras, no one was speeding, you could look at the video archive and see that. In Connecticut, we can't do that. In Connecticut, it's just for running red lights and speeding only. But technically, it's there, but it's disabled for the use in Connecticut until legislation changes. I will say this, if I can, Councillor, that that's partly why we have such an active voice in the State House, because we see this legislation as some of the best legislation in the country. But there's always areas where you could improve it slightly, right? And so we've seen some changes in the legislation over the last couple of years being navigated. And certainly the voice of some of our clients is that they want to be able to use the technology for a little bit more than just red and speed light violation, like video archive for the gas station robbery. That being said, there's a lot in the media right now about wholesale trawling of data information and using it for ALPR, which is something we don't do.
Well, that's what that was. I think you answered my question late in the presentation. You don't sell the data. You can't sell the data.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving of cameras, if, you start to solve a problem in one area of the town, we can move the cameras and, well, again, there's no cost, right?
Right.
So I'm just, there shouldn't be a cost.
No, that's correct. So physically, it's easy to move the cameras. You've seen how small and lightweight they are, and our construction, if we have to install our own pole, is very sympathetic to be moved. In fact, around the country, that's almost commonplace, where you put these cameras on trailers and move them to different parts of the town or county, depending on how traffic changes. In Connecticut, you don't do that. These are fixed installations that are approved by OSTA. But if you found that traffic changed over a period of 2 or 3 or 4 years, and you just want to put another camera in another area as cities evolve, and new housing development goes up with 300 homes, and so there's different traffic the other side of the street, the other side of town, you can certainly do that. Part of the programs here in Connecticut is there has to be reporting to the state every year on the violations and created from a program and some other attributes as well. And every 3 years, there has to be a rejustification to the state as to why you want to keep a camera in place. So to your example, let's say violations went to 0, and they never do, unfortunately. You'll typically see a 30 to 40% reduction after about 4 to 6 months, and it may go below 50% in time, but there's always a new crop of high schoolers getting a license every year. There's always new people coming through your town that from a state that doesn't have cameras. But if you did see the traffic behavior drop to 0, theoretically, the state would actually ask you most likely to remove that camera because the safety benefits would be
Anyways, okay. And so our state doesn't allow the remote, quote-unquote, camera because you have to apply with OSTA to get that
Every
location
Yeah.
approved.
Every location, yeah.
Okay. You mentioned using existing infrastructure potentially, as a business, speaking as a business and not driver safety for a second, you're putting out X amount of dollars to do this. And I guess back in my head, I'm going, how are you amortizing that? How are you getting your money back, right?
Yeah.
And I know that the length of a contract is going to be one of
Yeah.
the ways, but, again, you put it on existing pole versus putting, cement, whatever, but that could be a significant
We're
savings.
saving some money.
Right,
Yeah,
and never
exactly.
mind inspection issues, all that other,
Yeah, and
we're
we
going to
pa-
charge you permits too, so.
And we pass that down to the client city. So if we're going on your camera, on your pole, to your point, right, we're getting a price break on that, so it's only fair we share that with the community. So we charge a lesser price from going on the pole of a community than we're doing an installation of our own.
Yeah.
The camera itself, I'm hoping it's not lost. Is it down that end somewhere?
Somebody walked off with it, sorry.
Is
you
about
want it
$1,000 camera.
is about $20,000 to dig a hole in Connecticut. Put it with concrete in there and put up a pole, it's about $25,000 to $30,000. One pole. So they end up with a $50,000 installation. So we have no interest in putting cameras where they're not needed and they're not going to be able to be paid for by the simple economics of violations. The state won't allow it either, which is what I like about Connecticut legislation. It can't be a cash grab, a money grab, because certainly I'm not making money for a while at $50,000 a pole, and no city wants one pole. They need multiple poles. Weathersfield itself's got 14, as you know. So day one in the program, I'm in debt hundreds of thousands of dollars to the program. So if I can go on your poles, it makes it easier for everybody, and that price break flows down to the client for sure.
And so so now you're getting to where I was hoping to get to. So if there is a savings, so when it takes you 3 years to make it back if you have to put the pole in yourself. And let's say it takes you 1 year versus you don't have to put the pole in, right? So does that mean we get less per violation at the beginning and because you're recouping some of the costs of the capital expenditure?
So we actually have two different pricing models here in Connecticut, and some cities choose A and some cities choose B.
Sure.
If we're choosing the solution where we go on your pole, from day one you get a cheaper solution on both of those programs from day one. And then as the program goes on over time, we actually reduce the fee even further once we get to a certain amount of tickets issued and paid. So the longer the program goes, the cheaper the solution goes for you from same economics that you can appreciate that our costs have gone away or substantially changed.
Could I just piggyback there? Could you just go over your fee structure?
Yeah, so in Weathersfield, if we're going on their infrastructure, it's $1,500 per camera per month. If we're going on our own infrastructure, we had to dig that $50,000 hole in the ground. It's $2,000 per camera per month. And then we get $15 per paid citation as a violation processing fee. So the fine of the $50 goes to the town, and we take the $15. Now that $15 reduces to $12.50 over time, and then if it gets to a certain point in time and more violations have been issued, that goes down to $10. The town would most likely still claim the 15 on the violator. 50 plus 15 is 65. But their piece gets larger as time goes on.
Who adjudicates the appeals, by the way?
So again?
Who adjudicates appeals?
You can do it lots of different ways, but it's done by you, not by us. We set up various mechanisms for you to do it, but most towns have some sort of hearing officer, or I want to say a magistrate, but they're called different things in different towns, but someone that hears those types of parking tickets. So whether they're done remotely via Zoom or contested by mail, but it's typically a different party than issue the ticket. So if Sergeant Smith issues the citation, it's not wholly appropriate that Sergeant Smith then does the hearing later.
And then I assume, obviously, the clock resets if you get, once the appeal is rejected, then that 30 days starts, or to get the fine in, correct? Because they have the right to appeal.
Yep.
Right a while, okay.
Yeah, and that's part of that 5% business rules I was talking about, where we'd help you navigate that. If somebody contests a ticket and they're found liable for the violation at that hearing, you don't really want to get in a position where say, well, listen, the clock's only got 2 days left, you've got to pay up pretty quickly. It's best practice to give them a decent amount of time to make that payment. Now, whether it's 30 days or 15 days, that's up to you. So we would talk to the police department about what we see typically around the country, but you certainly wouldn't do it the remaining 2 days left on the shot clock.
So my last question, with collections, you mentioned collections. So if somebody doesn't pay it, do you actually, you put a collection on their credit report?
No, it doesn't go on the credit report. Well, there's a lot of laws around collections, so we're not involved in collections ourselves. So we work with third-party collections companies, either the city's existing collections company or some we would recommend that specialize in this industry. Some states in the country allow for a registration hold on in-state violations. You go to Maryland or Florida, for example. If you go past a Maryland speed cam and you live in Maryland, there's going to be a registration hold after 60 days if you don't pay your ticket after it's been contested, right? Connecticut doesn't have that, so everything goes to third-party collections, but the collections laws in Nebraska are different than the collections laws in Connecticut or Florida. So depending on where you live, there may be some different rules that apply to you. So we work with specialist companies that can navigate that. As you can appreciate, collections can be a litigious business, and we don't want any of that risk from us or for you, and so we navigate that specifically with the agency. Part of the work we're doing is actually at the State House to lobby for a registration hold here in Connecticut for in-state violations.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
You mentioned, excuse me, you mentioned length of contract. Is there a minimum, or if we decide to stop, is there a 30 day, or is it like much long? You know, is it? I guess what would be the break of the contract or something like that? If you could speak to that.
Yeah. So typically, most of our contracts around the country are 5 years with optional extensions. We've been proud in our past that people like the work we do, and so we constantly get renewals of those contracts. Because Connecticut legislation is written that you have to have a renewal of your permit for each location, we found that most communities want to have a 3-year contract with optional renewals because it tied in with the DOT permitting. Yeah. And we're happy to support that too. So typically in Connecticut, these have been 3-year contracts with optional renewals from them. If the law changes, for example, to answer the second part of your question, Councillor, and it says that photo enforcement is no longer allowed here, then clearly we just have to stop the program at that point and remove the cameras and installation hardware as would be appropriate. If we fail to perform under the service level agreements of the contract, if we fail to perform to the state legislation or the city ordinances or the business rules we set, and we haven't cured it within a 10-day period of time, then of course you have the right to terminate the contract for failure to perform the appropriate program, as you can appreciate. If you want to terminate for convenience, it's much like it is with your iPhone 16 that you got free from T-Mobile. If our hardware is on your poles, absolutely. 30 days notice, we'll take that hardware down, and we can then move that camera to another location, another state, another program at some point. We'd be disappointed, of course, but we definitely respect that. But you can also appreciate that if we start a program and we're hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, that if you want to just terminate for convenience, and we are installed those poles in the ground, then there's a small termination charge for removing those cameras early. Now, that termination charge drops every month. So the longer the program goes, the lower that charge becomes. And it gets to the point at the end of the initial contract that there is no charge at all for terminating regardless of whether it was your installation or ours. But certainly if it's your pole, no charge to terminate for convenience. I hope that answers your question, Councillor.
Yes, thank you.
Could I get a figure on that termination fee?
Typically $500 per camera per month of the contract.
It depreciates.
Yeah, contract remaining. So if it's a 36-month contract, $500 times 36 is $18,000, and every month the program goes on, that goes down. I just paid some invoices for Wethersfield, and $18,000 doesn't come anywhere near the cost of installing those cameras.
I really appreciate your presentation. It was very informative on a lot of different fronts. I also really can appreciate that the user experience for a violator looks like it's pretty easy to manage through. I'm a little bit concerned about data architecture and custody in general with this entire program. And remind me again, you're housing all of the data within a national law enforcement database?
Yeah, so it's our database in their safe environment, if you like. So they don't have access to it, but it's housed within their custody, in their building, if you like, within their supercomputers of government law enforcement.
Are there any states that you guys operate in where, whether it's local municipalities or the state level authorities, regularly interface with federal agencies and happily let them have access to such data?
No, I never once have had that.
Okay.
In more than 21 years. We are audited every year, by the way, by NLETS, so they will give us a sampling of between 250 and 400 plates across all our programs, and they'll want to know what the disposition was on each of those 400 or 250. It's a random number, because they want to make sure we ran plates for legitimate reasons. We're running it under what's called the OOI number of the police department here, and they want to make sure that someone didn't cut me up at the intersection this morning. I'm running their plate to see where they live, so I can, throw an egg at their house or something. So we get audited by NLETS twice a year, and then they do a physical audit of our premises every 2 years. All of our staff are background checked fully by CJIS, compliant, wet fingerprinted, run through the FBI databases, regardless of the role they have. So even the janitorial services for our office and all the lockdown facility we have, everyone's background checked and has to go through the same procedures regardless of what access to data they have. So we take data very, very importantly, and the encryption of the camera too. We've all got smartphones, and you can change a photograph, and that Easter photograph you took a few weeks ago and get someone's random face out the background of the Easter picnic that's not a member of your family. We have to be able to prove in a court that we didn't change the photograph. If that's your car, that's your car. And so how we encrypt the image at the time of capture and how we transfer that image across the internet is paramount to data security and data encryption.
Okay. You mentioned that there's the ability to do thermal imaging with these cameras.
Say again?
You mentioned that there's the ability with these cameras to use thermal imaging? No. Oh, I thought you had mentioned, we're not thermal. Infrared, sorry. Infrared. Infrared imaging. Was that mentioned earlier during the presentation?
No, we have two different types of detection frequency in the radar. So it's a 4D tracking radar, so it's the most accurate radar on the planet at this time in our camera. And because it's radar, not LiDAR, it's able to work very well in all light conditions and all weather conditions. If you're in the south or in Arizona where it rarely rains, LiDAR works great. But if you're up in the northeast where we have snow on the roads and ice on the road and precipitation in the wintertime, radar is impervious to that, where a LiDAR-based unit isn't. So it's very accurate radar using two different measurement techniques.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up to his Councillor Van Lilling's first question about the housing within inlets? I think he was kind of touching at this, but I'm not sure it was answered. So would a federal agency such as, let's just say ICE, be able to go through this federal database to access this data?
Not to my knowledge, no more than they can into your own DMV, because essentially we're acting as an extension of your DMV. Connecticut DMV or Massachusetts RMV is putting this data into a central repository where you can look at the license plates around the country. That's not done by the federal authorities.
Okay, thank you.
Your fee schedule, as you mentioned, $1,500 a camera for our pole, $2,000 for you. Is that any monies generated after that comes to the town? Or any money comes to the town and then we have to pay that flat fee?
No, so if someone's getting their first violation, essentially with a $15 processing fee as allowed by state law it becomes a $65 total fine for the violator. Second and subsequent tickets are 75 plus the 15 takes you to 90. You keep all of that money, essentially, and our 2,000 or the 1,500 is paid for by the paid citations. We have what's called a no-loss contract. So let's say you had no violations in 1 month and no payments for whatever reason, you wouldn't owe us 9 cameras times $1,500. Fake debt goes to the next month. And you typically find in programs like that by the time you get to the end of month number 2, the receivables from the paid citations is enough to clear any of the debt you may have had from day 1, which is, I said, fake debt. It's not really, you're writing a check to us. And after that, you're in credit to your community. So we send the net funds to you. Typically, the way these work out, Councillor, is about 60% to 70% of the money comes to you across the program.
So you're saying the first amount of money is generated goes to you, up to the 1,500, then we'll get the rest. Is that what you're saying?
So we get the $1,500 for our TAMRA
our poll.
and $15 per paid citation. You get the rest.
Okay.
If we have a deficit, though, it does continue to roll. It's not forgiven.
Yeah, but I've never seen one go past month 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But month 2 could have the deficit from month 1 and potentially a deficit from month 2, so now your deficit, I know you never saw it, but.
Yeah. No, theoretically you're right, but I've never seen it go to that far.
I have 2 questions for you. First one is a technical one, which is you went through that process, right? 10-step process.
Yes.
You had number 2 in there, which was verification. After the picture is taken, you do it probably within 24 hours. What does that verification entail? Is it an AI verification or is it a human verification?
Human.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just say like you get to a volume where a human can't handle it in 24 hours. How would you respond to that?
And so the violation of photographs taken is almost instantly sent up to our processing center within seconds of the violation. We're typically looking at that work queue, if not that day, the next day. So if it's the afternoon at 4 p.m., for example, the day shift is almost finished. We have a few evening people doing processing, but most likely your violation will be looked at the next morning. We've been doing this a long time, and so we've learned to navigate how many staff members to have online. It takes us about 3 months to hire and find, background check and train, and nuance a new staff member for what's called violations processing.
So
So typically, we don't get to a point where we can't process you within 24 hours. Now, sometimes, if we see that 3-day period stretch to 4, 5, 6, 7 days, we start adding overtime allowances to people, because people can't look at these plates for 10 hours a day. You just go mad.
yeah, and this is where I'm going with
Yeah.
this. So eventually you'll get to a point where you will have a classification algorithm just doing this, not a human being. What are the chances of doing that? Because eventually a human classification is subject to a lot of challenge.
Yep.
I will challenge it.
Yep.
Right? It's just like any other classification, right?
Yep.
Which human is doing. So human versus machine, because eventually you're going to go there. I know that for a fact.
You're stretching the human, yeah.
Yeah, you're studying the human, like any human work,
Yeah.
who is actually looking at this
Yeah.
for verification purposes. After a certain point, you have so much data,
Yeah.
you can just train the algorithm, and that's going to look at it.
Yeah. So there's a science behind it, and we have programs across the country. Some are from handheld guns, very similar to the laser gun you might see an officer use. Some are from red light violations, some are from school bus. So processors are only allowed to work on one camera or one city's type of camera for about 4 hours. And after that, they have to rotate to a different city or different type of technology. They're forced to take breaks. We have a system inside the system that actually checks your violations, puts them to another staff member. So if you have a new staff member who we just trained for 4 months, 80% of their violations will go as new events to an experienced violator for them to run. And if our experienced violator gets a different answer, then it goes to a supervisor. So there's a lot of science behind it. You're very right, Councillor. And we don't have staff members sitting there for 10 hours just doing the speed cam on Church and Main Street for that very reason.
Right, right. Yeah, so I'm just like also thinking about like forward looking, like how this goes and
Yeah.
how it's gonna, it might have some potential conflict with AI laws eventually if you start going out of the human realm here, which you might just well do like after like 10 years.
One of the final
yeah.
slides I showed you was the timeline to get a program operational, right? We had the 30-day getting the OSTA reports together and essentially 60 days after DOTs. That time period, once we've done the OSTA reports, we know how many violations, plus or minus, that we're going to get from your community.
Right.
So we start hiring at that point, and we start background checking at that point. So by the time your program starts, we've got another 5 staff members or another 6, whatever we need to keep this program operational from day one. But we still stay within that 3 to 4 day period.
Yeah, now it's more of like a operational question,
Yeah.
which is, do we have to go all in as a town, or you can do a pilot?
We can definitely do a pilot, yeah. And in fact, it makes it harder to do a pilot in Connecticut because of the OSTA regulations, but you don't have to decide from day one, we want 15 cameras, or the reports show us we need 15 cameras. You can start with 3 and evolve the program from there. You can start with just speed and add red light later. That's exactly what they're doing at Stanford. They're starting with school zone speed, and you saw that's why we have the 14 cameras going in there, and then they're expanding to more open area speed, and then red light violations too. Weathersfield's going to add noise as a second generation level at this time. So you can change things.
So is the cost structure different if we were doing a pilot,
No.
as a pilot?
No, every camera stands on its own level. And the nice thing again about state legislation in Connecticut, it will not allow you to put a camera unless that particular location can support itself. It's not about making Rocky Hills safer, according to OSTA. It's about making that particular location in Rocky Hills safer. So if you wanted to just do a pilot and choose 4 locations or 3 locations, you can absolutely do that. It doesn't change the economics.
So a question following up on that, how would you actually demonstrate that a pilot is successful in terms of your goals, which is improving safety?
Well, you have to determine what you're trying to demonstrate from a pilot. Are you
Right.
trying to run a smaller program for a period of a year to see what happened? Or are you trying to put a camera in to see how many violations you get for 60 days but not send any tickets? There's different determinations of
Let's say
what a pilot might
it's
be.
public safety, right?
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Let's just assume that. And
Well,
what
to
we
get public safety, you've got to send tickets with a financial fine on them because people don't learn from warnings. So just sending warning notices is not going to give you a true sense of how behavior can change over time.
I see.
Yeah.
So have you done this kind of like a pilot where you have like proven out the value case, whatever that metric might be? Or
Yeah, we put analyzers into your town to look at speeds. And if you wanted to do a warnings only program, you could certainly do that.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mr. Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't someone already do some tests in town for
Yeah.
us?
Yep.
So we've already got some of that preliminary data, I believe.
But was
was-
the same vendor or?
Different
vendor.
Okay.
No, different vendor.
Oh, that's why. Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I understand where you were going about the human verification in the sense that if your business were to suddenly scale dramatically in the state of Connecticut, you're getting 100 municipalities that want your work really quickly. You're confident that you have the ability to maintain a human verification schedule, that your staffing strategy that you've honed over the last 20 years
Yeah.
will provide for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, how many, I mean, not even like, not even like state, right? I mean, it's a national company.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean,
So
like,
they're not gonna
the
just, like-
business, the point being, I think you were getting at, like, we're both in the space of, we're not necessarily eager to go into a space where there's AI verification of anything, and on top of that,
I
we
mean,
just want to be clear
if
that.
if you ask me, it's inevitable. They will be doing that in 10 years. So.
I feel like that's a slightly different part of the
It
conversation.
is, but I was just like,
Honestly, it's
All
probably
right.
going to be way less than 10 years.
You've answered I think your presentation, first of all, answered a lot of our questions to begin with, so thank you for that. Plus, we've obviously heard from a couple other vendors and stuff. I just have a couple questions to confirm, a couple things about the camera specifically. So this is the same camera that you guys also have been using internationally?
Where, sorry?
This is the same camera you guys have been using internationally as well?
Yeah. Yep.
And it does the same camera does speed and also red light?
Yes, it
stuff?
does. Yep.
And so you talked about it gets a lot of data in terms of like vehicle types and things like that.
Classifications, yep.
So we've had we had issues where we've got some roads that are supposed to be restricted, like weight restricted, truck restricted, stuff like that. So, and sometimes we get complaints about it, and sometimes it's hard to verify. So if we were, from a reporting standpoint, to be able to look in the database and say, how many 18-wheelers came down, it passed through here, that's like data you would be able to.
Yeah, and actually, we work with your traffic engineering department that they get direct access to that information. So they don't get to see necessarily the violation information, that's PII.
And they don't, and that doesn't have plate information or information about the person, it just says this many
it's completely
vehicles went by
anonymized.
here and this is this type.
Yeah, one of the slides I showed you with some yellow bar graphs and some Venn diagrams, that was to talk about the anonymized violation data vehicle classifications. Yeah.
And so just to clear up also some of the privacy information that we talked about. So somebody from either a federal agency or another state can't search for a certain person and have that come up through our system.
No, everything's in a silo.
Yep. We have already identified some problem areas through doing some traffic studies before, but what would that process look like if we have a public hearing and people say, I'm really concerned about this neighborhood, and we have to justify a camera at that spot? Like, what would that process look like? If you're the vendor and we're having to submit stuff to do that, how do we justify that?
We had that in Winchester, that specific case. So at the public hearing in Winchester, the council did a very good job, and the town manager particularly, of creating a very good presentation about the traffic analysis studies they'd had, why they wanted to go forwards. And even before we did the traffic analysis studies, a lot of information about crashes over the past 10 years that have been there. And so it was a very good public hearing. It was very, very well attended, and I think everyone appreciated that these were the 4 locations being chosen by the town and why. But surprisingly, there was a lot of people standing up saying, well, what about this street? And what about just over there by the YMCA? And so the result of that meeting was not only an approval of the council to move forward as there were 4 locations that got approved by OSTA just 3 weeks ago, but actually we now started the analysis of those next 2 locations because the town wanted it. Now, if we find that, in fact, the people's voice is correct, that they are dangerous locations, there's a lot of speeding going on beyond the threshold set by the state, then the town reserves the right to actually put cameras there as well and protest the DOT. So we'll actually, once again, do some OSTA reports for those 2 new locations. That's a great example.
And then, I guess lastly, we talked a little bit about the appeals process. What are other towns doing in terms of their appeals process? So the ticket's issued or it's been verified by you guys, by a human.
Yep.
And it's gone to whoever we have in-house that reviews it.
Yep.
They say, yep, that car went through that red light.
Yep.
It goes off to the person. They say, I wasn't there, I didn't do it, it wasn't my car.
Yeah.
What are other towns doing for those appeals?
The state law allows you to contest your violation under some specific reasons. My car was stolen. I sold my car the week earlier. The plate hadn't yet changed to the new registered owner. There's like 4 reasons. But still, due process in this country allows us to contest a violation and be heard for our 15 minutes in front of a hearing officer. It's very hard for people to look at the images of their own violations, especially the video of them going past a school bus or running through a red light and say, yeah, I think I can get away with that with an argument in front of a hearing officer. So you see very, very few tickets are actually in front of a hearing officer. And those that are usually someone making some claim for benevolence. I know I ran the red light. I know I was speeding. My wife was in hospital. I was trying to get to see her before they took her to the operating theater, whatever the reason might be. And so that's why they contest the violation. 15, 20 years ago, they wanted to see the calibration certificate. Prove to me I was driving at 46.3 in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. Those days have changed because the technology and the controls around the calibration, the verification of calibration, and especially the controls in Connecticut that the DOT put in place about where a camera can go, I've got rid of those reasons to contest. And so you see very few people contest their tickets these days. And if they do, it's typically for the benevolent reason I was just demonstrating.
But that would be something like we have somebody from the clerk's office or something like that.
Yeah, so,
I don't know what we do for parking tickets.
Some communities want to be hands-off. They don't like the idea of someone coming in and having 15 minutes in front of a hearing officer or another police department officer and talking about why they don't want to pay their ticket. They just think it's not what they want to be doing. So they want to do it by mail. So you write in your letter of defense, please let me off this ticket for these reasons. And then that's done in the isolation, that hearing's done in the isolation of the community itself. And then a response letter sent back to that citizen, which also can be done through our system, by the way. You can do all of that through our system and keeps a record of their contest by mail is scanned in, and your response back to them is scanned in. Some communities say we want to make it more face-to-face, but maybe not have them come into Village Hall, so we'll queue up some Zoom meetings. So you'll go into like a calendary type environment, say I'd like to have my 15 minutes with the hearing officer at 7 o'clock next Thursday, and it will give you a Zoom link, and our system will populate that too. There's no one-size-fits-all. Every community is different, and certainly here in Connecticut, we're seeing from the 5 implementations we're doing, we're seeing a little bit of everything.
Okay, thank you.
One quick question. The one camera, can you do red light and speed with one camera on one post?
Yeah, we can do. So in Weathersfield, where we have a bunch of red light cameras down Silas Deane Highway, and it's not every intersection, by the way. We typically skip 2 or 3 intersections that goes to the next one. If we have 4 intersections on Silas Deane Highway, then we have some intersecting roads. But those cameras are all also doing speed at the same time. So if you're racing through the yellow light or the green light to beat the red, you'd get a speeding ticket. Now, your next question might be, well, what if you're racing through the red light? Are you getting 2 tickets, one for speeding and one for red light? And actually, the answer is probably 1. But that would be a business rule that we've set up with the police department saying, what do you want to do if we get 2 violations from the same
1 for 50,
event?
1 for 75. That's 2 violations in a year, right?
How about marking these areas, by the way? Are there signage required? And
Yeah, so there's mandatory signage. You have to have 2 signs before every camera, one within 300 feet and one no further than 1,000 feet from the camera. And so signs are down to us as the vendor, so we put the appropriate signs in the appropriate location by state law. We work with a very good contractor here in the state called Nikon. I don't know if you've ever come across them. They do a lot of installations of traffic lights and poles around the state. So they install a specific sign for photo enforcement here in Connecticut. There's typically 5 signs that are used throughout the country, denoted by the manual uniform traffic control devices, and it's one of those signs. And sign auditing is important. There were some headlines recently of a community in Connecticut that was issuing some tickets during the snow season. Some of the signs have come down, and that's part of one of the small boring details of a program that we help you navigate. How do you make sure your signs are there? And those are the differences in some of the programs you see. So signs are important.
Do you have a map of the ones in Weathersfield for me?
Yeah, can we get a heads up on when the Weathersfield ones are getting?
Well, I hope to see you at some of the community events we'll be doing this summer as we start. Well, we're going into construction now into the cameras, so we'll be doing those fairly soon.
Great.
Last tiny little bit. First, I assume that if we as a council have further questions along the process, we can reach out to you for further
You're
answers.
very
around your
welcome to all
platform.
my colleagues, David and Adam, of course.
And then this is more of just, I'm fairly certain I know the answer to this, but just for our clarity's sake, in making our decision about an ordinance, if we go forward on speed only, there is not a video trail of record
Correct.
data for any of these violations. It would just be still images and not video recording.
Correct.
If we go for the other, that would include video recording.
Yeah, that's correct. There's no contextual value of videoing speed. If I showed you a video of someone doing 30 or 40, it looks like the same video. So you only take still images with a speed violation against a traceable or a radar. If it's red light, you need the video to show the contextual value of the light changing from green to yellow to red.
Thank you for all your answers to our questions.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. All right.
Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Do we need a motion to table it again?
Yeah, so I guess just now where, see, nobody walked off with it. It's all right, we did have the police chief here, so I guess people.
I do have a
so-
request for next meeting, if that's okay, but I'll let you go. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so Ray and Mona, or open it up, if, from here, what are the next steps? I mean, my gut is, I want to encourage the public to have feedback in terms of what what's important to them, what they think.
What would that look like? You know, a hearing, but we don't have the expert, we need the
Yeah,
experts
okay.
to come in and answer those questions.
Or should the first conversation be around ordinance, or do we just want to table this for further discussion at another meeting?
I would like to, if possible, maybe not have it all open, you know, not have the full public, well, the public's welcome to come to any of the meetings, but let's table the public, whatever meeting we're talking about. But what I was hoping for, maybe for us to discuss among ourselves is, well, anyway.
You want a secret meeting? Is that what you're trying to say,
Not a secret
Melissa?
meeting, that's what I'm trying to say, not a secret meeting, but
Discussion among the council.
discussion, yes, thank you, on comparing the three
Yeah.
vendors somehow. You know, the types of contracts they're offering.
Yes, actually, Chief may be helpful with this. He's
Yeah.
been to a few of the other towns' procedures and everything, so.
Yeah, my recommend, no, within the development of the ordinance, at some point, we're gonna have to do that and hold a public hearing and to do so. But I think leading up to that, I think my recommendation would be is to put it on the agenda for public discussion. Let them stand before, citizens come in and you can ask them questions, they can ask you questions about what you think the program should be. So I'd be here to do the same. And then from there, as a council, you decide if you want to start pursuing the process of identifying a vendor, which would mean RFP, going out to bid. Again, that's a conversation for Mona, the manager, and you all to have in the background. And then if we were to identify a vendor, certainly I'd be looking for someone who's going to help us with this process, help us with the development of the ordinance, help us with the development of these studies. But I think the starting place would be to hear from our community and bring them here and allow them to speak to you and voice their opinions.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I also would say that outside of that, just tabling till the next town council meeting, opening it up as a discussion without a vendor presentation, where we kind of get to the point where we decide which pathway do we want to take on the ordinance, which types of violations do we want to look at, and then decide what our criteria are for vendors, and maybe start looking at what our ordinance language might be. I think we have a lot of things to do related to this, and maybe just one more discussion that is a little more open-ended about which pieces we attack.
If
So,
we can get a vendor that would help us with that, though, might be.
yeah, so Chief, my question would be, would you recommend public, then vendor, then
I would say-
ordinance?
Mona's the guru here, but I think the next step, again, is to put something on an agenda item to notify our constituents that we're talking about this, we're discussing it openly, we want to hear from you. From there, that gives you the input that you may or may not need or don't have thus far. And then from there, I think the next step is, if it's the council's opinion that we're moving forward toward the adoption of an ordinance, that we step out, we look at an RFP, we look at the bid process, we look at all vendors that bring this town the best deal and best technology available. And within that vendor is, part of the RFP process would be an expectation that they will help us develop the ordinance. And I think from the last meeting, Council, you discussed, there's nuances we can carve out of this that don't have to line up exactly with the state, just can't be more restrictive than the state. And I think that's the kind of community we possibly are, and probably should have those discussions openly as we go through that process.
Yeah, and I think that point of the public conversation up front or early on, at least before identifying a vendor, before the ordinance, all of that stuff, is important, because what if 1,000 people show up and say that they don't want any traffic cameras? And I'd rather all that stuff come up front
Save a whole lot of work if we hear and you're confident that we have the support of the town to move forward. I mean, we're seeing it happen around us, so I don't think we're seeing people oppose it. But when this started a year and a half ago, we met with David and Sightstream, who came in early on, and I will tell you, Ray and I were very apprehensive to be first early on the table, because we didn't think the town was ready at that point. And having seen some other towns catch up, you don't want to buy the first Tesla, right? You want to make sure the bugs are worked out of it, or you don't want to buy the first whatever, right? The first time I can remember my friends not wanting to upgrade their iPhone because the new technology, the new software wasn't as good as the last one. I think our timing here is perfect. I think we've seen Middletown, Weathersfield, other people kind of catching up. And, Rocky likes to be ahead of things. I think this is a perfect place to be, right in the middle, of the timeline.
There's nothing that says we can't hold multiple public hearings. We could hold a public hearing ahead of this process, like you're describing, a public discussion about it, and we can hold the required public hearing on the subject matter of the ordinance at a later date. I'm not afraid of a few extra.
No, I think it's a great idea. Let's see what the public wants now, if we want to move forward or not.
How about you, John?
I'm fine with the consensus.
John's like, I've been here since 4:30 this afternoon.
Fair response.
So, yeah, so I guess, I don't know if we need to table this or
Want to schedule a public hearing?
Well, you could,
Or-
but I
or
think it would
maybe
be
we
like
just work on
a-
that.
A public discussion session or something.
yeah, like a town
Yeah.
hall type
Yeah, sure.
type thing, like a town hall forum type thing. 'Cause I want the back and forth.
All right.
You know, we advertise like a hearing. you
Yeah,
know, So we get it out there.
Yeah, we got to notify everybody because we'll all be there and everything. So
Can't we do it like we had the health district tonight, before a meeting,
Yeah.
after the public safety meeting?
Yeah, that's only like a half hour. We might need more
You
time.
think we need more? Okay.
This might need to be its own main event.
A what?
This might need to be its own main event, just based on
Right.
the potential enthusiasm on either side for it.
or maybe
That'd
it's
be a
some-
special council meeting then, you're thinking, or,
Let's see what the agenda looks like
okay.
in the next few days or, you know.
Okay, it's not something we we don't have to set a date or time or anything right now. We can work
And
on
I'll
it.
stay in
over the
touch
next
about it and try to.
Yeah, if we try to put it on the next agenda and kind of push our constituents, maybe a little, promote it, maybe trying to get people to come out and speak at our next council meeting, maybe that would work for now and see, I don't know.
I think all of us will do that. Yeah, we'll promote it.
Sure.
So for now,
All
does
right.
that mean that we should table it? Is that the
If
motion?
we put it on the table, it's got to stay on the table. Our parliamentarian, what do you think we need to do?
Well, I don't think we need to do anything.
I don't think we
It'll
need to
just
do it
appear on
today.
the-
I don't think we
Okay.
need to pick a date today. I think we should do a public hearing, but I don't think we have to set.
Yeah, we
that
don't have to
date
settle on
today.
it right.
Do we
We
need
got a
to
lot going on right now.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what I was.
We don't need to table it to move on?
No.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Brian.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay. Item number 3 on the agenda. Out of 9.
We don't have any appointments right now, but we do want to have the naming committee, and we would like to see if there's any interested people would like to submit their name to the town manager by April 30th, so that we can appoint at the May 4th meeting.
Yeah, we need two. We need two public.
Two members of the public, yeah, so who's ever interested, put your names in, and we can, if we get more than 2 people, we'll have to decide
Just to
don't know.
clarify for the.
to appoint today.
I got some appointments, but not for naming committee.
Okay.
Yeah, we got a request to name something to the town manager.
So the naming committee would be a committee that determines names for town buildings that are, or structures that are coming up for a name?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's an ad hoc committee, so.
Yeah, just wanted to be clear.
So just a heads up to the
It's
to the
important,
public.
thank
We
you.
have some other appointments, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have some nominations for Sustainable Task Force. We have 2 regular members, Jack Elward and Geraldine Yu.
All right. Great.
Thank you.
And no other nominations, all right.
That's correct.
So approval of minutes. Get a motion to approve the minutes for the April 6th town council meeting?
Motion to approve meeting minutes from town council meeting, April 6th, 2026.
I have a little discussion.
Okay.
Sorry.
No.
The April 6th minutes, under item 8B, discussion possible action, farmland and farmland machinery tax exemptions. The motion refers to Chapter 223, taxation, Article 12, property tax exemption for farm machinery. But the public hearing agenda tonight referred to it as Article 13. I just wanted to make sure that if that's a difference, that we change that. Sorry.
All right.
So,
So
Do
are
I
you-
need to make a new motion to
so a
approve
motion
the,
to table till,
no, motion to approve the minutes with that change,
With
with the
that change,
change
yeah.
to the, as amended, yeah.
as amended?
Verify what the correct.
April 6th.
Do we need to verify what the correct citation is?
We do need to verify.
223 is the taxation. 223-10 is the statute of authority, 11 is the application. This is all for the increase.
Article 13
Actually,
for the machinery.
wait a minute. It was 223, but
It would definitely make more sense if the error was on the minutes side anyway, because it might have been because of being misspoken at the last meeting or something like that.
So it should be 8 instead of 7, is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying Article 12 in the minutes should be Article 13 instead.
Yeah.
Within that whole long stretch of how it identifies where this lives.
Hey, where'd Stuart go?
I really love the way statutes are organized.
and then what did the minutes say for the 223?
The minutes said that it was Article 12, and after Chapter 223 taxation, Article 12, that's in the minutes, but in the public hearing notice, it is Article 13.
My suggestion would be that Daniel just verify what the,
Correct.
the first ordinance was,
It's 13.
and then,
It's 13 and 14.
yeah.
13 and 14. Okay.
So 43 and 45 are just the amendments for tonight's meeting. '43 and 45 for buildings, and 41 and 42 for machinery.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. 223-43,
Right.
right? And 44,
So that's correct.
yeah.
So do we, so we need to amend it?
As amended.
We can approve it as amended.
Right.
If, yeah, go
So-
ahead, Daniel.
Okay,
So
so the-
motion to approve the April 6th minutes as amended to change the article number.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
I have to abstain. I was out.
All right, approval of minutes, Town Council Budget Public Hearing, April 7th. Do I have a motion to approve this, or does it need to be amended as well? Any second?
This is for.
All in favor, or any discussion? Aye.
I wasn't there.
Abstention.
You weren't there.
All right, approval of minutes, Town Council Budget Workshop, April 9th.
No, you weren't there.
So okay, the abstain.
They got pictures of us.
Do I have a motion to approve the April 9th minutes?
That must be, okay.
Here for the-
Motion to approve the April 9th Town Council Budget Workshop minutes.
Do I have a second? Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions?
Two.
Okay,
All right, subcommittee reports. Moving right along, finance and capital improvements.
I'll make this quick. Finance overall status, revenues are on target. The state revenues, the municipal revenue sharing was received, and the pending half of ECS and the PQAP money is still out there. Interest revenue is exceeding target. On the expenditure side, that's on target also. We have something on the consent agenda for the expansion of the Veterans Memorial Green Project, which is a contract for, I had it here, BL and Company. For the expansion design, but I made sure at Finance to make sure that Ray is going to, the town manager is going to be forming a steering committee, and all of this will have appropriate public input. So this is just assigning a contractor for design, and they will work with the public on feedback on how, with the design and moving forward. And this was the low bidder, BL Company.
So some of those bids went over?
Yeah. Well, this was the highest of the three that came in, right?
think there were four.
The highest scoring, the second
Highest
lowest
scoring.
bidder, and they were all under 50,000, but they were about a $1,400 range. Engineering had a team review them and score them as the low bidder and also about the most qualified, most experienced. So there was a qualification score.
That's right, yeah. They were recommended and received the highest review score.
And also,
This
the,
contract will be funded within the DECD Urban Act grant in the amount of $500,000.
and we had to send that out to DECD for review and approval. So they
We used
approved it.
those, that company in the past,
BL companies, yes.
and been satisfied.
Yeah, we've used them for phase 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the Silestein Highway over the past 19 years.
Thanks.
Yeah, they're
Very familiar.
pretty reputable firm. One of my company's
And
competitors.
that was basically it for finance, but there's one thing I wanted to ask Mona, if you could add sanitation as a topic of discussion for next finance?
Sure.
Okay. That's it.
All right, government ops,
No report.
public safety.
Oh, boy. Public safety.
What do you think about speed camera?
I don't have 90 minutes again. There was something interesting there during the fire report. The fire chief reported that a drone had crashed on a call due to a propeller failure, but the insurance will cover the replacement. So I just thought that was kind of interesting.
The
Never
bird
heard that
strike,
happen.
most
Yeah.
likely.
I think, Ray, it's on your report, the deputy chief position? Oh, it's open. There's something else on your report, I think. And for firefighter 1 and 2 course, it's beginning in May and ending in September. They also applied for a grant for a highway blocking tool called a Scorpion vehicle, which is, it's a trailer that's towed behind, ideally a 6-wheel dump truck to help with blocking traffic. So they applied for a grant for that. And I asked about concierge, any updates on calls, and the one item that stood out was an elevator breaking. Actually, 1 or 2 breaking. They had to rescue somebody out of there, didn't they, on one of them?
No, I didn't say that.
Just
I said
breaking?
2 of them, yeah.
Okay. And for the police, they have a dispatch candidate in background phase. For patrol, they have 2 candidates in background phase. So they currently have 40 of 42 sworn positions filled. Lieutenant Steve Morgan retired April 1st after 25 years of service, and we thanked him. On community engagement, the SROs, quote-unquote, hooped it up with the Harlem Wizards, supporting Rocky Hill Education Foundation. And National Drug Take-Back Day is April 25th from 10 to 2 at the RHPD. And the ambulance had just average month, nothing really stood out. And that's it.
Can I, quick question?
Yeah.
The grant for that spider, whatever you call it? Scorpion, sorry. Do we have a truck that can drag it?
Well, ideally, they need at least a
Okay.
6-wheel dump truck, but they have, I'm sure they could tow it behind one of their vehicles.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
I apologize, John. I have one question. Oh, sorry, Counselor Emmanuel. Were the Rocky Hill Volunteer Ambulance Service represented at the public safety meeting tonight?
They were not.
That's very disappointing.
And and I had mentioned I was going to be speaking with the town manager afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Senior liaison?
Just very quickly, Missy Hicks asked that, Human Services asked that I outline 3 programs. One of them, Counselor Emanuel already discussed, the drug take-back. The second is the Spring Fling to be held on May 2nd at Brilliant Park from 9 to 11. And the third is the private event at Elmridge Park from 3:30 to 5:30 on June 3rd.
All right, thank you. Land acquisition, farmland preservation.
No report. Our next meeting, other than what we have on the agenda for the ordinance. Our next meeting is Monday, April 27th at 5.
Liaison to the state rep and state senator.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few updates tonight from Representative Wood and Senator Lesser. Since our last meeting, House Bill 5581, which was the bill amending a prior conveyance of state land to the town of Rocky Hill, it's advanced out of the Legislative Commissioner's office and has been placed on the House calendar. It means that House leadership can decide to call it for a vote any day they want to at this point. It'll probably get packaged with a whole bunch of other conveyance bills at some point in the next several days. As I mentioned at our last meeting, Representative Wood, Mayor Smith, and members of the town delegation all testified in support of this bill. This is the I-291 former site that was going to be part of that highway, and just as it was mentioned before, it's a good amount of land that DOT isn't using. We're keeping a little bit for them to use for staging, but this is open space that, you know, if we lose it, we never get it back. It would be wonderful to add it to our cadre of properties here in town. Representative Wood also hosted a small business tour gathering on April 14th at TK and Company here in Rocky Hill. It was a very nice event and a good opportunity for residents to connect directly with her, while also hearing from the owner and her team about one of the local businesses in town. Senator Lesser has been leading out front on a wide range of issues at the Capitol. He's been a critical leader on Senate Bill 397, which addresses accountability when federal immigration officers violate constitutional rights in Connecticut. That passed the Senate. He's also been active on Senate Bill 3 and House Bill 5559, which are about healthcare affordability and access, and House Bill 5302, which would raise outdated Husky C asset limits for our seniors and residents with disabilities. So we have a bunch of residents here who will care about that getting through. One additional and very important update involves Senate Bill 274, an act concerning non-resident landlord registration and increasing penalties for repeat building and fire code violations. This was a bill that Mayor Smith, Deputy Mayor Thoreau, and I all testified on back in March at the Planning and Development Committee. Since then, the Senate debated it. They amended it to further strengthen the penalties for repeat violations and passed it on April 14th. At its core, the bill is about giving towns better tools when bad actor property owners exploit enforcement gaps, hide behind distant ownership structures, and leave residents to live with the consequences, something we all know a little about over the last recent experience. It strengthens non-resident landlord registration, improves notice and service mechanics, and increases penalties for repeat building and fire code violations. I really want to thank Planning and Development Co-Chair Senator M.D. Rahman of Glastonbury for running the floor debate, Majority Leader Bob Duff, and Senate President Pro Tempore Martin Looney for their leadership and support, and especially Senator Lesser for standing and adding Rocky Hill's voice to that debate, effectively speaking from our lived experience and helping to contextualize the decision before the Senate. I'll wrap up with this. There are only 16 days left in the legislative session, but realistically only at most 11 actual session days if they go with every day they've got available to them. I'm proud of the effort our state legislators are making this year, and I'm also really proud of the impact that Rocky Hill is making on the process. We will be using these remaining days with real urgency, and I know our delegation will continue to work hard to advance our interests, and I intend to do this very same from my end. And I look forward to bringing more good news back at our next meeting on May 4th, which will be 2 days before the end of session. And frankly, at that point, all they'll be dealing with is the budget. So that's my report, Mayor.
All right, thank you. School liaison.
The next board meeting is April 23rd.
All right, and next on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
All in favor? Aye.
No discussion?
For consent.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep.
Yep. Any opposed? All right. Consent agenda passes. And we already did old business, new business. Now, new business B, discussion possible action, amendment of town ordinance, chapter 223, taxation. Article, all the rest of it. What's that?
For the buildings.
Yes, this one is the one for buildings used in farming.
Okay.
Anybody have anything they would like to add? Discussion?
Happy to make a motion.
Approval of the amendment?
make a motion to adopt the amendment to Town Ordinance, Chapter 223, Taxation, Article 14, Property Tax Exemption for Buildings Used in Farming as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you.
I would also like to make an motion to adopt the amendment to Town Ordinance, Chapter 223, Taxation, Article 13, Property Tax Exemption for Farm Machinery as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
All right, motion passes. Mayor's report. I promise I will keep this short. I'm cutting some out. Just brief update on concierge. So Ray and I met with the Attorney General's office to see where we were at with their ongoing oversight and the phase 2 of their settlement. The Attorney General's office and JRK have both proposed proposed agreements. They are not the same just yet, so they're still negotiating that, but we had a meeting with them to talk about the town's how the town wanted to weigh in on that. The fire marshal, Health and Human Services, building official was all there. So they are making progress on that, but still work in progress. We also had a meeting with Eversource this last week. We talked a little bit with them about what we can try to do around the solar farm to make that more advantageous to us. Also touched base with them around what they helped us with in terms of the concierge issue. They actually streamlined some processes, waived late fees and things like that for a lot of the residents that were in transition, not there at the time and stuff like that. It actually, so we have a good line of communication with them. It was good. Upcoming events. This Thursday at the Senior Center, I've got a coffee hour at 10:30. It's been pretty well attended lately. I've been doing it monthly, but it seems like it was like last week that I was just there. So that's just in the lobby at the community center. And then I just want to put something else on everybody's radar. The VA hospital twice a month also does a coffee hour at 9:30 on Fridays. Any veterans are able to go to that. It's a lot of the folks that are there are residents of the facility there, but also anybody else from the community can come. It's great. It's just to socialize, but they've been putting that on for a little while now, and so that's coming up this Friday, the 24th. And that is all I need to touch base on today. Over to the town manager.
Okay, planning and economic development activities, excuse me. Kim Ritchie is introducing to planning and zoning, introducing some of this legislation that was discussed earlier to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Some of the larger impact bills deal directly with zoning issues, land use issues. Also, she is discussing with the commission the proposed transit-oriented development district with the Connecticut Municipal Development Agency. Still working on that. Human Resources was pretty active. They completed searches for the recreation supervisor, assistant fire mechanic, and the reference librarian. Also, they've developed some training modules for the newly appointed fair rent commissioners. There's FOIA and best practices with compliance. And some updates for Title VI in the ADA regarding transportation service policies for the minibus drivers. Excuse me. As was mentioned, did you mention somebody mentioned the drug take back? Maybe that was public.
Public safety mentioned, yes.
Two of us did.
I cut that from my report, so if you want to reiterate it for time number 3.
Yeah, the Rocky Hill Police Department on Saturday, April 25th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., in partnership with the Drug Enforcement Agency, will host DEA's National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day. There are some guidelines. Collection sites will not accept syringes, sharps, or illicit drugs. Liquid products like cough syrup should remain sealed with caps tightly secured to prevent leakage. It will be right in front of the police department, 699 Old Main Street. Should be exciting. Everything the police do is really fun and exciting, so it should be a similar event. And finally,
Sounds like a joyous good time.
well, you have to have fun doing many things.
Sure.
And I mentioned this last time, America 250, in recognition of the America 250 campaign. Rocky Hill Schools, the Rocky Hill Public Schools, they're looking to raise some funding for their education foundation by selling T-shirts. Feel free to contact the Board of Ed or Sandy for assistance. And also, they do have a flyer on our website and on their website where you can just scan and get the information. One more mundane piece of information. DOT is now announcing their 2026 Safety Vegetation Management Program along the interstate highways and all their state highways, which would include West Street, Route 160, Silas-Dean Highway, and Cromwell Avenue. They will be trimming back invasive species and other vegetation that's encroaching within their right-of-way. That will start roughly May 5th through August, starting in the Central District, which would be around May 5th in our area.
And that's it?
That's it.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All
Go
right,
get your
thanks,
America
everyone.